Hang on a second, Alex. I'm realizing my personal legend of staring at my phone. I know. That's horrible. It's so horrible. But it's so 21st century.
It kind of makes you think about those things, though. And with that, welcome to this week's episode of the 800's after our 3-week break. Thanks for sticking with us. I am your co-host Alex, and you just heard from my lovely co-host Adam.
Hey.
And so let's dive right into those plugs. Just to remind you, since it's been so long.
We love music. You should too. If you joined us earlier, you heard Fearless First from Incompetech. They're cool. They have cool music. I'm just kidding with the robot voice. Incompetech's awesome. We use them for everything. You should check them out. Incompetech.filmmusic.io for more cool, awesome sounds. Also, we have a YouTube channel. The link is below the video. Thanks for the kidding. The link is below the video. You check that out. We post cool things like these videos and some other things like D&D stuff and some other stuff. I listen to all these books. I don't read them because I'm lazy. My preferred platform is Audible, a subsidiary of Amazon. You should check it out. And if you want a 1-month free trial, go to dmstable.com/audible and sign up today. Yes, via strike. Lazy does equal busy. Too busy to sit down and put the controller down and pick up a book. Yep. Oh, yeah. Okay. What other plugs do we got here? I think that's about it. Oh, we got a Patreon. You should join us. That's how we decide what book to read. That link is also below the video.
I'm taking pot shots there at Adam. He's talking just because we can.
Real voices.
So this week on the 800's, we will be exploring the book The Alchemist by Paulo Coelho. This book focuses on the story of a young shepherd who decides to chase a dream, first to a gypsy, then to a king, and on to the alchemist, where he seeks to discover his personal legend.
Hey, I used personal legend already.
Hey, I had mine written down.
I didn't.
So who's better, the improviser or the prepared?
I got mine in first, so I think it's me.
Touche. Wow.
Good tell. Ouch.
Whoa.
Hot shots tonight.
Zinger of the night so far to VS Drake. Thank you very much.
If you're joining us for the first time tonight, let me give you the rundown. Alex and I will think up of topics to talk about or questions to ask. When we post these topics or questions, or simply ask each other these questions, feel free to comment in on the chat. If you have something you want to talk about, also comment in on the chat. We love answering questions in chat, and if it's cool enough, we'll put it as a formal question that shows up on the video and all that fun stuff. That's all I got. It's back to you.
All right. No. Just let you sweat for a second. All right. And just a quick reminder that this is a show geared towards adults. We do cover adult themes and such. Maybe not so much today, but there is occasionally swearing as well. We try not to rely on it, but it happens. And we are trying to create a friendly community that helps support people and their hobbies and interests, so the general gist of it is be nice or buck off.
And thanks for the follow, host 00312.
Hey,
as our DM's table chat bot is saying, hope you're not a bot. He's not a bot, I'm just kidding. Yeah. Alex and chat, what was your first impression of the book?
Well, first of all, you didn't thank me for suggesting this book.
Oh my Hey, you suggested it. I put it on the list.
Again, we're getting into that chicken egg argument here of who deserves
Although
credit.
using my previous argument, then you deserves the credit because you came first. So
All right, so actual first impressions. Mine is a bit unfair because I've actually read this before. I read it way back when it first came out, actually. And on top of that, this wound up actually being on my ACT redo. Fun little factoid there for you. Um, but honestly, I think it's a nice, smooth read. It's very low pressure. It's just enough to prompt you to question certain things. Like it feels like philosophy light, like just enough to prompt a question, but not enough to like really in depth think about things. It proposes a viewpoint of the world that you either accept or question. And it was kind of fun to see where I accepted things and where I questioned them. And I think it's probably different for each person. So it was kind of a fun little adventure in and of itself, despite the very short nature of this book.
yeah. Yeah, definitely that is always a challenge with shorter books is to world build without the space to world build. I think our lovely author did that pretty well with this one.
Mm-hmm.
Is jumping into the story felt very seamless, and it felt words aren't coming well to me today. No, it's not because of the beer. How dare you suggest that? um, no, I felt right away the book sucks you in, makes you care about this shepherd boy who's just wandering around trying to figure out what he wants to do with his life. So I had good first impressions.
Yeah, and it seems like that's pretty resounding throughout the chat, storming like the perspective of the author, and it's really easy. I think Coelho did a good job of creating a character that was very easily relatable to a lot of people. It's just a boy who has a set destiny that he chooses to just make his own path instead. And I think on some level, almost everybody in the world can think of at least one decision in their lives where they wish they might have, they wonder the what if. What if I had made this decision instead of what had been predicted for me? And that makes it very easy to relate early on, and especially like you said, when you world build efficiently, and like VS Drake said, super efficient with the world use and the creation around the character. It doesn't really take a lot to set you in the scene because, well, one, it helps that he's using a world that exists. You can just set yourself in it. It's a lot easier when you're dealing with the world that we live in, give or take a few hundred years.
And some
But
fantasy elements, but anyway.
it's not fantasy, it's historical fiction. Yet. Well, it's not fantasy yet. I just haven't gotten to that point yet. Hey, we'll get to the point where he turns into the wind. But, to start off at the very least, it's very realistic and it helps sink you into it. And again, it's a character that has a point in his, at a very transitional point in his life that I think pretty much anybody can relate to, even if they don't feel that now, at some point they did. Because honestly, if nothing else, that's what it's like to be a teenager, at least in modern society.
Yeah, I'll say Coelho did a really good job of describing the world without being like, so and so walked into this dark, damp, musty, stingy room. He did it by explaining what the characters did and how they interacted with the world, not by just cheaply labeling things as they happen. So yeah, I agree. It was good world building. You via Strike, you turned into the wind. We gotta talk, cause that's cool. I broke what I was. What's your condition? I want to hear this. We can't talk about anything else until he's done typing.
It's air conditioning. Hey.
Get out of here. Get out. Oh, man.
All right. So, honestly, there's not, because Coelho is so efficient in how he words things, there's not really a lot to pick apart as far as the world building goes, because considering this small amount of space that he had, I think he did such a wonderful job of just immersing you in a world where there's just enough detail to get you there, but not, but there's so much open that your mind just takes over the rest. There's just enough to get you there and have your mind take over the rest so that he can focus on the more metaphorical and philosophical aspects of this book, which I think takes up a major portion of it. Again, which is a lot considering what this is, like 100 and some odd pages and 4 hours on audiobook.
Yeah.
Which, by the way, I want to shout out one of my favorite voices in all of cinematic history. Voiced this book, Jeremy Irons. I could listen to that man all day.
Have you heard any of his other works or just this one?
I haven't heard him read anything else, but I've seen him in plenty. And I've always enjoyed his voice. Between him, like, he was the saving grace in Aragon, the movie, and his voice was like half of that. And he's been in a lot of things, but it was just really, it took a very pleasant book and they gave it, I think personally, the perfect voice for it, if you're going to choose a celebrity voice anyway.
From the, yeah. No, I didn't place him until you said that, but yeah, totally. He's got a really soothing voice. Viewers or listeners or commentators, there we go. Commentators, if you didn't listen to the audiobook, you should. It is very pleasing to the ears.
Yeah, and the thing is, having read it physically the first time, it is soothing. It is kind of like a less preachy chicken soup for the soul type of book. It has that kind of like kind of feel to it.
Yeah.
But I think it's honestly enhanced by his voice, which I know we don't typically get this deep into it, but like, we're trying to explore every little bit of this book, considering that there's, it's so condensed. But on that note, one of the things I would like to talk about and pose this question for the chats, what did you think of like the whole dream interpretation sequence and how that played out throughout the story? And have you had any dreams of your own you wish could be interpreted by a gypsy who may or may not take a tenth of what you get?
Well, I mean, in the end, she interpreted it wrong anyway.
Yeah, how so? Please go on. How so?
The treasure wasn't in Egypt. Like, that was the whole thing, is, you got to go to the pyramids to find your treasure, and it's not there.
Semantic difference. She didn't say the treasure was there. She said you have to go to Egypt to find your treasure.
I thought she said your treasure is near the pyramids.
I thought she said that you had to go. You will find where the treasure is near the pyramids. Again, and like that's the thing, is that Coelho is so efficient with his words, it could be very much just the difference between a slight rephrasing, and that's all it takes. Now, if there is that much of an oversight, but
my take on this is it's one of those things like I felt like the dream translation was more of a if you walk by a cliff you'll fall kind of translation, like okay, well, yeah, if you walk along the cliff for 10,000 miles you might fall at some point. Like it's I can't think of the words, that's why I'm failing here. Like one of those things where because you said it can become true kind of a thing. So like what
it's kind of a self-fulfilling prophecy.
yeah, there we go, self-fulfilling prophecy. Like when he met the girl at the oasis, at some point he could have been like, this is the treasure near the pyramids, I'm kind of near the pyramids, that's good enough, you know. It was only the alchemist being like, "No, you're dumb. That's not it," that made him continue on.
Yeah, but it also works in the other direction too, where he specifically talks about, well, if you don't believe in this, then it becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. So it kind of is like this power of perception that it brings up, because he he's sitting there with a boy who's like, you have the choice to either interpret this as the will of the universe, of God, of the hand, whatever it may be, or you can just resign yourself to what suits you in the moment, as opposed to listening to your heart and taking control of your so-called destiny.
Yeah.
But sorry, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
Have you had any dreams though that you would like wish were interpreted at some point in your life? Like,
no, nope.
no. I don't know. I've had so many weird ones. Like, I would really like to know what it means. The fact that I've had a recurring dream where I've hatched Godzilla. That would be kind of interesting to know. And in the same dream, for some reason, constellations come to life. But to be fair, the first time I ever had that dream was after watching the cartoon version of Sinbad, where literally these constellations come to life. So, but it would just be interesting if there, to see a less. I think that might be the reason why it is a little dissatisfying when he gets the interpretation, is his dream is so straightforward. It wasn't anything crazy like what I described. There was nothing. It was so straightforward. The only real interpretation was, oh, it was a child, so that showed it to you. So it must be real. And the rest was just a gypsy woman being a stereotypical, I'm going to get something out of this kind of character, even though I'm not necessarily doing a lot, at least as far as the viewer goes. But
yeah.
Let's see here. We had a question from VS Drake about
What do you guys think of the religious use?
VS Drake, before we go into that, would you mind clarifying, please? But like the representation of religions and how they could coexist. Honestly, that was really nice to see, and I think that's something that that despite people following things more, I don't know, it seems more devoutly to me. Like, people are more willing to accept religion and the practice of it as a part of their daily lives and speak it out loud. Arguably, it's fairly similar with Arabic, but at the very least with Christianity, it was more overt. And it was interesting to see Christians and Muslims overtly expressing their religion, but kind of just accepting them, especially within the context of this book and its main theme, and one of its main goals anyway, and that's finding the language of the world, the soul of the world, whichever you want to call it. So I thought that was kind of cool, honestly. It's something I wish was more present in our day-to-day lives now.
Yeah. I get the feeling that that's just more of a that's how it was in the time frame that this book was portraying, and that's how that area was, is the like Spain and the Middle East and Egypt are a very religion prevalent area.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Well, yeah, and considering like one of the things that like I don't know that everybody necessarily knows offhand is Spain and Algeria have less than a mile between each other. Like they nearly touch. In fact, technically well, it depends on your definition, but technically there is a land bridge. But there's a bridge between the two that is very easily crossable, and when you consider the history of like the overlap between Christianity, Muslim, the fact that they're still along the Mediterranean, so there has to be Jewish influence as well. At least the main three religions that we see in the West, just kind of intermingling as a date and accepting that from it on a day-to-day basis is interesting. Although one of the things that does get downplayed a little bit is like, well, they call them the invaders. So those who, literally invaded the place to spread their way of life, religion included, but now they've settled into this harmony, which it is nice, V.S. Drake, I agree, that religion was present without being a conflict point.
Yeah.
There were misunderstandings for sure. I mean, starting with that woman, don't talk to the women dressed in black. Because we're married.
Yeah.
But it wasn't ever a contentious point. I think that was just a matter of fact type of thing that allowed us to show that adaptation is a part of learning the language. The adaptation to other cultures is a part of learning the language of the world, the soul of the world. And I thought that was honestly a good lesson that more people could do with.
All right, let's move on to V.S. Drake's next question. Of all the phases of his journey, what was your favorite?
I'll put that up there. I'm already halfway through typing it.
Okay. I'll answer.
Okay, go ahead.
I enjoyed. Just like Stormreed. I liked the Crystal Shop. I think there is where he learned to be less afraid of letting go of his old life and to try new things and to move towards his goal instead of being worried and clinging to his shepherd life.
I think that's a really good place, but I would want to be a little more specific, and actually I would put it in slightly before he gets to the shop, in that moment when the rocks fall out, Union and Thuin, the white and black rocks, when they fall out of the satchel, and he realizes that there's some answers that aren't meant to be known, and that's where he chooses to continue rather than give up. I think that's the beginning of it, and I would tie that with the moment where he decides to leave the oasis and head to Egypt. They're both pivotal moments for me where I thought here's the chance to, like, here are these defining moments where he had the chance to settle into what would be comfortable, or to, and it was a choice to soldier on. Now, granted, he has a level of direction that most people just don't have in their lives to begin with, but that, I think, is something that I think a lot of people could find empowerment from, both within the specific character and outside of the book. But yes, it was definitely sad when he got robbed, like, right off the beginning. But I think it's an interesting moment where you start to think, like, this whole book is predicated on this idea that our, fate isn't necessarily a thing, but at the same time, when we want something, the universe conspires towards it, which is that, what is that, fate or destiny, or no? Or is destiny or fate even a fixed thing unless we work towards it?
Yeah.
And I think that was one of those pivotal moments where it kind of confirms that, yes, indeed, for fate or destiny to exist, it only exists when there is work towards it. If we fall into anything, it's falling into the trap of moving away from our personal legends.
I think the book kind of touched on the point that I want to raise for that is stepping out of his comfort zone versus going back to what he knows he can excel at. Like, he knows what he wants. He'd be happy with what he knows he can already have, but he knows that he wants more than the shepherd life. So those defining moments where he overcomes the decision to return to his shepherd life and instead continue on is very well portrayed and a very powerful moments in the book.
Yeah, and that's why it's one of my favorite parts along the journey, is thank you for perfectly articulating that exact reason why. Is it would be so easy to just give up. Although Stormy does bring up a good point, is there's that moment at the end of being at the crystal shop where there's a similar point where he has the money to buy sheep, but he also has the money to go on to the pyramids. And I don't know why that one didn't hit me quite as hard. Maybe because I was busy learning other little lessons, and I kind of, like, even the first time through, predicted that once he got it, if you got enough money for sheep, you might as well just keep going for, the whole kit and caboodle. But it is bigger, upon my second reading, it is a bigger moment. And thank you for Stormreed for bringing that one up. And
do you think the king visited him in several different forms?
That one, honestly, I remember thinking that exact same question the first time that I read this book, is like, is the Alchemist and the king of
You pronounced it perfectly. That was spot on.
Are they one and the same? Or even the person who or even the gypsy woman, honestly, like, are they technically one and the same and just like little pieces of it? I personally chose to believe that they were separate, but because they were all in some way connected to this language of the world, they were guided by the same greater hand, whatever you choose to call it. or whatever they choose to call it. They give it several names between God, Allah, the hand, whatever it may be, or the world even. And I think that was just, he just happened along people who were in tune with that. And I saw them as different characters guided by the same driving force, not as the same character.
Yeah, I don't think the king visited him other than that one time. I got the impression that his sole duty was to push people to understand that they could be more than what they are. Especially considering the who was that guy who was looking for the alchemist?
Oh,
Yeah,
the
V.S.
Englishman?
Yeah. What V.S. Drake said, the king was a catalyst. That's a good succinct way of putting it. Like, the ideas that the king gave our main character obviously can come from somewhere else. The Englishman had those rocks. He was after similar things as our main guy. But obviously his own personal, why can I not remember what they called it? Personal, thank you. His own personal legend, but he still called it his own personal legend. He still had the rocks. He still knew about following the omens. You guys are taking me out of visits happening now.
I'm not sure what visits V.S. Drake is referring to. But I agree with Storm. I agree with you and Stormy, but especially about like the king being a catalyst with giving him the rocks, because again, it ties into my favorite moment, you know, where those rocks are the thing that just keeps him going, and he only uses them the one time, which is like, honestly, if I put myself in that same situation, I'd be sitting there like, was that a sign? Was that a sign? Was that a sign? And just using it over and over again. So I just don't have that perception.
So my take on the stones were they had no mystical power whatsoever. They were a reminder that he should be willing to take risks.
Mm-hmm.
And I think he understood that as soon as he used them that first time, and then when they dropped out of his pocket, I think he understood, oh, I'm not actually meant to use these. These are just here to motivate me.
Yeah, and I think you're right there, because it honestly, if they were meant to be anything more than that, they would have been used more than just the one time. They were just a reminder. They were, you know, because the king couldn't be there. It was just, you know, keep on. It was it's kind of like those little cards that say like keep on, keep calm and carry on. Yeah, like that's really all they were, you know. It seems like V.S. Drake clarified though the visits from the king visiting the shepherd son, he was told never to use them. So it sounds like we convinced V.S. Drake that the visits were from multiple people, not necessarily the king over and over. Correct me if I'm wrong.
That's how I took his comments.
Yeah. And I think V.S. Drake, one of the reason why I brought up the fact that I would probably use it more often than was absolutely necessary is just because I don't know that I would have the faith in myself that the main character does to just accept that all it was meant to be was a, you know, little shove in the right direction. Now, granted, I don't know what I would be saying in a less modern world where, you know, the day-to-day pressures are not necessarily the same. You know, because we only have the context of when we live, as opposed to like, I mean, think about it. How many jobs are like an old time shepherd, where you could just walk around with sheep and make sure that they don't get eaten by wolves and that they head towards water and green pastures for years on end. Like, I think the most modern equivalent of that would be the cowboy, and that's still like 200 years old. You know.
Random tangent. There are two types of video game players. The player that, as soon as he gets hurt, he uses a health potion, and the player that beats the entire game and ends up with 100 extra health potions in his inventory. Just in case.
I'm so totally in the latter category there.
Yeah.
There's a certain level of stubbornness too. Like, I don't fucking need these potions, but so where do you think our main character falls in that then? Like, what's your interpretation of that?
In terms of like the stones and stuff?
No, in terms of like if our main character was a video game player, is he the save 100 potions or use it immediately?
I think he's the save 100 potions kind. I think he wanted to accomplish it on his own.
That's true, but he also uses things along the way, not necessarily those stones, but he still uses advice and things along the way. I don't like, I'm trying to draw an equivalent to like what would the potion be. If you're saying the stones, absolutely, then he's a save 100 times, but if you're talking things that help him along the way, you can ostensibly say that counts as everybody from the Alchemist to Fatima to the Englishman to the crystal shop owner.
I would draw a line between things that do not improve his own self, such as the stones that just give him an answer, and things where he is assimilating skills or knowledge to better assist him in the future, such as his abilities in the shop, his time with the alchemist when he learns to frickin' turn into the wind and all that, you know?
Yeah, that makes sense. I think I see your point a little bit better now, and it helps also with V.S. Drake mentioning that he was, you know, willing to push through being stubborn. He didn't squander much after being robbed, like kind of like, you know, to use the video game metaphor, when you get hurt, just, you know, waiting until you heal, as opposed to, you know, conserving resources as opposed to using the quick fix. And he didn't use the quick fix, and that makes sense. And yeah, and also, as Stormy said, he's not afraid to fall and get back up, you know, which shows a level of persistence that I guess a healing potion doesn't exactly metaphorically or literally lend itself to.
All right, I got a topic.
All right, lay it on me.
Kind of near the end of the book, he's our main character is talking to the alchemist, and he says, well, what if I just go back to the girl in the oasis and become the guy who lives at the oasis, and I live with the girl because I love her and that's all I want, and forget this treasure biz? And he says, nope, you'll totally hate it. You've still got to go do your personal legend.
Yep. High five.
Still got to go accomplish your personal legend. Here's the question bit. Do you think the alchemist was right? Do you think he would have regretted his decision to give up? Or do you think he would have been content with the life that he found at the oasis?
The Alchemist paints a picture where he says it's not as if there is no happiness there. He just says that there's a limit to it, and that shepherd has reached a point in his life where he has a connection with his own heart strong enough that he wouldn't be able to just put away the personal legend and the dreams that come along with it. And it's not to say that people who decide to go after like that, who choose that, can't be happy. It's just, are they reaching their full happiness potential, really, or true happiness? Or in this case, I believe they use true love specifically as the example. And I think that it was a fairly apt metaphor, considering that I have been in similar situations. I don't think I've ever had quite the same level of very specific drive towards one goal that the shepherd does at any given point in my life. I might have come a little bit close with just pursuing my degrees, but it never had, the shepherd had a more profound generalistic goal in it. Like shepherding was about freedom, finding the gold was about pursuing his personal legend, and finding a means to connect with the soul of the world. I've never been on that level where there's anything quite that profound or specific, but it's just like, I have a goal, I can pursue it. And there are times where I've had that question in my head about, what if I veer off in this other direction? And I thought it was a very poignant moment for the Alchemist to be like, yeah, you could find it there, but you've stumbled upon something that is so deeply profound that you're never going to be able to forget it.
Yeah. My take, I don't have a good answer, but I do want to I do want to throw back to the crystal shop and the owner of the crystal shop saying he never made his what's it called, pilgrimage.
Yeah. Mecca.
Thanks, Fiestrick. he never made his pilgrimage, and the boy was pushing him to a point where his excuses were going to run dry.
Yeah.
And that he kind of realized that he didn't really want to make the pilgrimage. He was just throwing excuses out there to prevent him from having to do the pilgrimage. And that why I equate that with the Oasis love is I think there's a line between understanding what your personal legend is and accepting what could be your personal legend.
And I think you hit the nail on the head there. It's one of the reasons why I actually really like that moment when he decides to leave the desert, is because he is making that actual choice as opposed to like proposing it to somebody else who's already made that choice and having them look back on it. Like he already knows from like the beginning of that interaction, he's like, oh, I'm going to tell him something that's going to piss him off. And he stopped himself from doing it before with the baker, right, in the original village. And then when he goes on to the crystal worker, he's just like, oh yeah, so really, like, what's stopping you? Nothing. Well, that's fucked. And it's a very cool moment, and one of the reasons why like it was really difficult for me not to list the crystal shop as one of my tops is because I think it's the one where it begs the question of the reader, what is that moment in your life, if there is one, where you chose to rely on dreaming rather than pursuing the dream.
Yeah.
You know, like, are there those moments? There might be people out there that haven't, and props to you, because when I posed that question to myself, my list is a mile long. But The Alchemist, I think, took it to the next level, where he took somebody actively pursuing it, who was questioning that active pursual, and, like you said, pushed him to the next level to think about really realistically, what is this going to look like down the road? And it's that thing that they bring up from the very beginning, balancing the oil and the surroundings.
Yeah.
Oh, let's see what we got.
Stormreed says, after he finds his final treasure, what does he do next? That one, I presume he goes back to the girl in the oasis and says, I'm rich now.
I'm rich, bitch.
I'm rich now, and also I can be the wind. Let's get married.
I have to assume that at some point he probably. I'm honestly not as sure that he goes back, because of that moment where he said his heart was content with just going to the pyramids. But I don't know how much of that is content universally or content in the moment. You know.
Yeah.
If it was just a moment, I absolutely agree. He winds up going back and at least finding out if it was true love. You know, did she really wait? If not, I don't know. It really did seem, though, like this kid, like, ultimately lived out his personal legend, and, you know, in a very both grand and subtle, like simultaneously grand and subtle way, you know.
Yeah. So let me kind of transition this into a question of sorts. So we know he accomplishes a lot along the story. He picks up a ton of stuff. He leaves stuff behind to continue pursuing the treasure. In your own opinion, Alex in chat, what would you be most satisfied with out of all the things that he either had, has, or gave up throughout the book?
Honestly, and it's something that I genuinely hope to find for myself, that I have struggled with and worked on for years, is just knowing my own heart, like befriending my own heart and just understanding it on the depth that he does. Because I do believe that if you can do that, there's a certain amount, like, pretty much the rest of it falls into place. You know,
Yeah.
and that's more like, you know, especially if you follow the logic of this book. Now, do I think I will be able to turn straight up into the wind and convince it to do my bidding? Probably not. But I think there's a level of purpose and understanding and contentment with the world that comes from understanding yourself on the level that he does. And that's what I wish I had, regardless of anything else he has.
Yeah, I think, like, to me, the treasure that he ends up with is like the stupidest thing he gets. Like, oh, you've got wealth. Cool. You know, you had that at the crystal shop, right? Like when you had this super cool idea that completely revolutionized the shop. And like, can you imagine if he goes back to the Oasis and that one of the armies had taken over the Oasis and is holding her hostage and says, I know you went and found treasure. Give me all of your treasure or I'm going to kill her. You know? What would he do? You know, like, I feel like the greatest thing that he got was the experience. And the fact that he accomplished his personal legend. But kind of throwing back to what I kind of said earlier, I think the only reason why the treasure is getting him to that, yes, I accomplished my personal legend, was because he decided that getting that treasure was his personal legend. If he had started off by going, I want to meet the love of my life, the girl I know is the love of my life by one glance, then I feel like he would have been just as satisfied if the book ended 50 pages sooner, you know.
I think
yeah. Stormy just says money isn't his greatest treasure. That's kind of what I meant, is like that accomplished feeling he got when he got the treasure would be his greatest treasure.
Yeah. I mean, I personally still find that to be secondary to like everything else he learned along the way, like the more profound this is going to carry through the rest of my life moments. Although, like you said, that experience, if you take the experience as a whole, that does technically encompass what I talked about specifically. I just think that's the one bit that was more universal than the rest that he picked up, except maybe the understanding that in some form or another, love is the language of the universe and the hand. Um, and it's just a matter of understanding how it expresses itself. But in general, Stormy is right. The actual treasure itself is just kind of it's the period on the end of the sentence. That's all it is. It wraps it up, but it isn't the end all be all. It's just the end all. It's not the be all.
Yeah.
And even then, it's probably just a part of an ellipses, considering the way this book ended.
You know, the one thing I kept waiting for in this book is like at every stage of the journey, somebody else was telling him what he wanted.
Mm-hmm.
Like I kept waiting for him to be like, no, this is what I want. You can go fuck off, and I'm gonna be happy over here with this thing that I want.
He does, though. It's that moment when he finds that happiness in his heart, with communing with his own heart on the way between the oasis and Egypt. That is that moment where he's, well, it's less no, fuck you, I want this. It's more, oh yeah, that I'm not doing this for anybody else. This is for me and my heart.
Okay.
You know, because like just because somebody tells you the right thing, you know, like so if you have like 10-20 people telling you to do things, there's a chance that one of them's right. It's just a matter of whether or not you're doing it because they said it or if you're doing
Yeah.
it for yourself. And he happened to meet somebody who was right. He had very strong guides towards what that was as opposed to, you know, others. But you know, I think he did have that moment, just there was no fuck you moment because it actually aligned with what he needed and wanted. VS Drake though asks, how sad were you when he got his ass kicked in the desert? I honestly wasn't. I thought it was just, it wasn't like pretty, but I wasn't necessarily sad, really.
When did he get his
Because
ass kicked? When did he?
waiting for the king to be the gypsy's husband. This isn't like some weird, like semi-fantastical rom-com, BS Drake.
It's just like some guy who goes out there. One day, my love, we will get some fool to bring back our treasure.
I think maybe correct me if I'm wrong, Via Straight, but I think he was talking about the moment where it's not necessarily ass kicked, but when he has to give up his treasure or die in the desert prior to becoming the wind. Or nope, I'm wrong. Never mind. I was thinking the wrong thing. Please clarify for us, Via Straight, because we are.
Are you talking about when he was digging the hole near the pyramids? When he was like, "Yeah, this is totally where the treasure is." Okay. Yeah.
Again, I wasn't, because at least for me, at that point, he had the thing that was most important. The treasure wasn't it. Yeah, it fucking sucked, but like he had other shitty things happen to him, and he still had what was most important.
I think what we were supposed to interpret that as is an omen that he was supposed to follow. You know, if he had refused to give up that he was there digging for treasure, he would not have found out that the treasure was back at the frickin', what was it, a cathedral or something?
Yeah, in his own hometown. That's a very good point, because there is that point where he actually has that lesson earlier on too, where he's told that no matter what, at the very end, we're tested the hardest, and it's a matter of whether you move on from there. So that was like the final shitty kick in the nuts test. Do you have the balls?
Yeah. I think, like, in that scenario, though, it's like, well, I could refuse and die, and then I don't have my treasure, or I could tell them and live and still not have my treasure, but at least I'm alive.
Well, and if you learn the right lessons along the way, he would know what was more important, right?
Yeah.
And make the right decision. And if not, he'd be one of, like, what he ever says, one of the millions who doesn't reach that dream, let alone the ones that never even know. So why don't we start wrapping it up, unless we have something specific from the chat. We can go into final impressions.
Yeah, let's do final impressions.
This is one of those.
Nobody commented. Go.
This is like, I know we've talked about like those like vacation books before, and I think this is like the height of that sort of like vacation book, where it's not a hard read, it's slightly thought-provoking, and it is just enough compelling to get you through it, and it's a really easy read. It's something I'd recommend for somebody who is fine with waxing philosophic a bit. Like we have, it's not going to be anywhere near like the Brandon Sanderson type of world building type of stuff. It's just a chill read that is slightly thought-provoking and provides an interesting perspective on the world that you can contemplate or not at your own whim. And if somebody's looking for that sort of thing, this absolutely works. And I would, I know, because it's never going to wind up on this show, it's way better than The Secret, but provides some very similar themes in some respects. So I would definitely put this over. But I also see the point where some people, I was reading reviews on this, didn't like it. And I think it's those people who are looking for something more substantial, where it isn't. It's just meant to be nice, easy, thought-provoking, maybe a little soothing, maybe a little uncomfortable, but, like Stormy said, a good adventure.
Yeah. Yeah, I would equate this to, as somebody who enjoys two different types of adventures. Like this weekend I went camping. I really enjoy camping. I also enjoy roller coasters. A Brandon Sanderson novel is very much a roller coaster. It gets your heart pumping, gets you super excited. um, and it hits you hard. But this book is like camping. It's really relaxing. It's still very entertaining. Um, it's a different kind of enjoyment than the roller coaster books, and I would definitely recommend it.
That's like such a perfect metaphor, and I tried to embody that a little bit with my garb between like the Oasis and just like the taco hat, you just kind of like that chill, nice, but a little bit of adventure thrown in, and just it is nice, and it's wonderful to see that V.S. Drake enjoyed it to the point of, actually finding it to be hitting spots that they didn't even know that they loved. It's so cool to see books do that, help you find things like it scratches an itch you didn't even know you had, and just gives you a better perspective on what you want to, not only out of books, but life and everything. And, like I said, and even in the beginning, it's kind of like philosophy light,
Yeah.
Oh, and one of the things for those of us reading this, Paulo Coelho, almost all of his books have a theme to them. The theme for The Alchemist was wisdom. I know his other ones, like 11 Minutes is another popular one. The theme is love. There's another one. I can't remember the title off of the top of my head, but it's courage, and all of his books have like a main theme that he builds around, and I thought this one suited wisdom pretty well, personally.
Yeah, I would agree with that sentiment.
And
right.
So if anybody wants to look up his other ones, they're all pretty similar. I think 11 Minutes is the longest, and it's still only like 230 pages. And not like a big book, just like a solid 230 pages. Anyways, with that final thought, why don't you, Adam, go ahead and announce our results for next week, for our next book.
Yeah, so as you guys probably know, we're doing Gods of Jade and Shadow by Silvia Moreno Garcia for September 25th. That's in 2 weeks. Kind of getting back into the rhythm of 2 weeks here now that summer's coming to a close. After that, as determined by this week's vote, we'll be doing Alice by Christina Henry by October 9th. So those are the 2 books. I've not read either of them, so looking forward to some more new adventures. Yes.
Yeah, and Gods of Jade and Shadow should help finish up our themes for our Latinx author month. I know it's we're into September, so yeah, September is Latino History Appreciation Month, and then with Alice, we're starting to get into our horror. So again, if you want to see a specific horror book on our next list, let us know. You have until tomorrow. Otherwise, we're gonna plug it with some scary shit for what will be our last one before we do our 1-year anniversary show in November, first week of November. And I am correcting myself from last time because I thought we started a little bit later than that, but I believe November 4th will be our 1 year. Oh, sorry, 6th. My bad. I was close. So November 6th, we'll be celebrating our 1 year, and I will be here for that. I won't be missing it, but I'll probably be missing the next one. So, yeah, we definitely, or maybe you can get us a cake. No, I'm just kidding. I don't think we have enough followers to have that kind of pull. But thank you, everybody. It's been fun so far, and I'm looking forward to celebrating that all with you. Again, if you have any more haunted books that you want us to read or put on our list for October, let us know. And
if you pick a book that managed to make me not be able to sleep, you will win a grand award. That award is me messaging you all night long, saying how much I really appreciate your effort to pick a good horror novel. So just keep that in mind with your suggestions.
All right, so why don't we get into our plugs for the night then?
Sure thing. Don't forget to tip your waiter. Oh, wait. This is virtual. That's not what you meant. Okay. DMstable.com for all things awesome about the 800s and other things that we work on. Speed read it. Okay. YouTube.com. There's a link below it. Oh, speed read it. Nope.
Punctuation makes a difference there, folks.
Nope. Not reading it. Thank you for the suggestion. I've heard things. Yeah. The clown book. Yeah. Yep.
It is insensitive. Their preferred pronouns are they, them. Anyways,
Moving on. YouTube plugs. Link below the video. Check that shit out. Patreon.com/DMstable. Links also down below the video. Check that out and give us money. It's totally not begging if it's on the internet. And if you want to chat with us, check out our Facebook and Twitter at the DMstable on Facebook and at DMstable on Twitter. We post things about books and other nerdy things. And if you really like us and want to chat with us 24/7, we've got a Discord. You can hit us up on Facebook or Twitter, and we'll get you the link for that Discord if you're cool enough.
And P.S. To be cool enough, you just have to not be a dick.
Yeah, that's pretty much our only requirement is don't be a dick. But if we later decide you are a dick and you were just wearing a clown face to make us let you join our Discord, we can't.
The clown face. Second qualification: no clowns.
No clowns.
No actual clowns. So like a clown face. Like no, thank you.
Oh man.
I may or may not have a thing.
Anyway, this is the point where the music plays and we start getting to our closing thoughts. Like, thank you for joining us tonight. And Alex, do you have anything else to say?
No, just thank you, everybody, and we'll see you next book.
See you next book. That's good. Thanks, guys. See you around. I wonder how long we can chat until